Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. It has been a hot minute since I sat at the desk to review something, but this show is one of my favorite things, and knowing how long it takes me to get through reaction videos and get into the spoilery things, I want to make sure I am definitely not missing any weeks talking with you guys about this show because it is one of my favorite properties of all time when it comes to video games. It is one of my favorite things on TV following what we got in season one, and I am just so stoked and excited. So every week we will be talking spoiler free here at the desk, and I am pumped to dive into what we got in our first week back with this one. What are we talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat? We are getting ready to dive in, like I said, spoiler free, into The Last of Us season 2 episode 1, Future Days. And like I said, the excitement level for this show is just through the roof for me. Seeing what Craig Mazin did last year on season 1, seeing how well he worked with Neil Druckmann and bringing Druckmann in as the creator of the game to be involved in the production and the story and everything that they were doing. Like, it's just one of those relationships that's so symbiotic that as a video game fan, they didn't leave any stone unturned, and when they did deviate or give us additions to what we got in the game, it was always stuff that was elevating the lore and the story and what we got from the video game side. And this is one of these things where adapting part 2 is just something I'm so fascinated to see how they do. This game is so much larger than part 1, and we already know they're breaking it into at least 2 seasons, possibly 3, and I for sure see how you can get to 3 seasons out of part 2 if you slow play certain things, if you shuffle a few things around. There's enough content there to give us 3 really, really top end seasons that are just on the same playing field as season 1. And what I love about this first episode is just bringing us back into this world, right? It's one of those things where, as a video game fan and being familiar with the world, and then having my parents who are not familiar with the video game at all, and seeing how they were responding kind of as a direct baseline for me for people who aren't video gamers, this is just a world that feels lived in. It feels so real and rich, and you can tell that there are relationships and there are people, and these relationships and people feel like they have existed for super long periods of time, even if they're just on screen for the first time together, right? Like the way that all of that feels is just a vibe I love. And episode 1 launches you right back into that vibe. Now, this might be a little spoilery, but it's not really, because it's exactly what we saw at the end of season 1. What I love is that the episode picks up right where we left off. We get to see that brief conversation between Ellie and Joel, where Joel swears everything he's told Ellie is true. You know, what happened with the Fireflies was, something that she can trust him on. And knowing that that is going to be a massive piece of this story and a massive piece to what is going on with their relationship, I think it's brilliant to start there. And then the show did do something I wasn't sure it was going to do. One of the things I've mentioned in the trailer reactions that I've done is that in the game, there's a 4-year jump. It technically opens with them already living in Jackson. So when you get to the show and you see a 5-year jump, I think that still makes sense. But I thought we might slow play where that jump comes in and kind of take some of the flashback elements from the game and slide them forward. And what's cool here, Mazin and Druckmann aren't doing that. They are diving right into that jump. And what's cool is when you do make that jump, they've been living in Jackson for 5 years. And that's some of this feels like a lived in world, and the relationships and the people that they come across through this episode are people that you feel like they have known and been around for the last 5 years. And that's just something that is a credit to both the writing, the production, and the acting. And that's one of the things that I love about this episode is it is a reset for us, right? We are in a different location, although we've been to Jackson before. It's a new place for Ellie and Joel. And we are kind of just laying the groundwork of what's going on in Jackson. And what this episode does is kind of just shows us one full day. It happens on New Year's Eve, which is interesting because in the game, the first day you're in Jackson is technically New Year's Day, and you kind of flash back a little bit. to things that happen on New Year's Eve. So I like the idea of just establishing New Year's Eve as a full day, what's going on in the town, where Ellie and Joel come into play with things, and just kind of giving us a fresh lay of this new land that we are going to be living in for a bit. And what's cool with the idea of doing the New Year's Eve full day is it opens up Mason and Druckmann to add new things, give us little bits that aren't necessarily in the game, but also, as they did in season one, have pitch perfect recreations. If you've played the game and you've seen the New Year's Eve dance stuff, it is so freaking good. And that's one of the other things too that I love about this episode is establishing some of the relationships that Joel and Ellie have with people in town, specifically Ellie and Dina's relationship. That is a friendship and a relationship that is just so important to Ellie's character now as a 19-year-old and as someone who is now in a community. And seeing how they function, you can tell right away why they get along, why they work so well together when they're out on patrols. And you get to that New Year's Eve dance, and if you know the game, it is just a perfect recreation of what goes down there. And so much of that is a credit to Isabella Merced. I am a huge fan of hers. Like, since Dora the Explorer, I've been on the Isabella Merced train, and she is a pitch perfect Dina, and that chemistry, like I said, just the back and forth that she has with Ellie, it's so apparent that her and Bella hit it off really quick. And it is something that needs to work and needs to be that perfect in order for what's coming in the season to really work and hit when it needs to. You get to see a little bit more with her and Tommy and starting to grow that kind of uncle relationship. And if you have a strain with your parents, the uncle, the aunts are kind of the people that you'll go to. So seeing how that relationship works and the way that Tommy cares about her and how they get along was something really nice to see, again, when you're kind of setting this new foundation. So really cool to see those relationships being built. Some of the other people that Ellie, comes in contact with or is around as far as going on patrols. Love seeing that. Love seeing what a patrol looks like. We do get a little bit of infected action, so you get reintroduced. And much like season one, when the infected are around, you were on the edge of your seat. The other thing, too, is it's not necessarily new in the sense to video gamers. This was something that was kind of not touched on in season one, but is something about the infected that is in the game. And the way Druckmann and Mason are adapting it and utilizing it, it's kind of showing us a bit of an evolution with the infected. And that's a really cool thing because it elevates that threat, it raises the stakes, and it sets up our first scene with the infected to be something that I think is super effective to getting you to the edge of your seat and going, oh man, there's going to be some stuff this season that is going to be fun to play with. Flipping over to the Joel side, you do have a relationship with Dina, and it's interesting because she's kind of the parallel to what's going on with Ellie and Joel right now, where the relationship I think Joel would like to have with Ellie, he sort of has with Dina. And it's fun to kind of see that. Again, Merced's chemistry with Pedro is fantastic, and the one back and forth that you have with the two of them is really, really good. And one of these things that when you get toward the end of the episode and that first kind of gut check moment happens, it's not just Joel looking out for Ellie. I think he's also looking out for Dina, and that's just something that's in Joel's DNA, and that execution is top end. The other relationship that I think is really interesting already that we're getting is the relationship that he has with the therapist, being played by Catherine O'Hara, that we've seen in the trailers. Now, I haven't played the game since COVID, and I have not finished and really got in very deep into the 8.5 kind of cinematic cut of the game that's up on YouTube. So I could be a little rusty, but I don't remember therapy being part of what goes on in part 2, and it's a nice welcomed addition, I think, because it allows us to kind of get into more of what's going on with Joel internally. And the scene he has with O'Hara is phenomenal. I mean, there's a point where like you're starting to see him maybe kind of break down. You're like, oh, he's going to get into it. And then that just stern Joel face comes across. And watching Pedro execute that stuff is wonderful. But again, it's a space where I'm interested to see how much of this we get and how we utilize that. There's also a really cool deep cut video game element that's added to this scene where there is something that comes from the games that is not with no therapy being in there, is not something that is directly connected. This is an ad for the show that I think makes a ton of sense and makes that conversation all the more interesting. And outside of just kind of setting all these baselines, the other thing that I really dig about this episode is the thematical layers that Mason already has working. Yes, like I said, there is this evolution piece that's starting to come into play with the infected and where that could go or stem and how things are working with the infected here and the spores and this the quadriceps, right? Like how they're functioning and evolving. Really interesting, the little pieces that are laid in to see how they play with that throughout the season. Also, like I said, the relationship between Ellie and Joel and just the conversations already happening about parenting, and in particular, parenting an adopted child. Being someone who is in a family who adopted a kid after we did a bunch of foster care when I was growing up, and the fourth kid we fostered, we ended up adopting. And it's one of these things where, yes, while when you get to be a teenager, you're going to butt heads with your parents anyway, one of the things that you can see in that type of a relationship with an adopted child is kind of throwing the "you're not my actual parent" in your face. And we see that a little bit in season 1. And while we don't see that usage directly here in this first episode, that is certainly a thematical element that is at play with what's going on with Joel and Ellie's relationship, and seeing how that parenting stuff and those relationships function on a thematical layer. It's nice to see that in this first episode, knowing that that's something that we're clearly going to be addressing and playing with as we go. One of the other things thematically that's in here is, of course, while you have the infected threat, humans are also a threat. And the idea of refugees, that is something that's being talked about in town and bringing outsiders in. And while, again, you're just you're scraping the surface on that type of conversation, it's another thematical thing that Mason is layering in that you can tell is going to be something that is talked about. And then something I think that's a direct carryover from season 1, this concept of violent acts and their repercussions and the type of relationships in both how you change a relationship and how a relationship can formulate coming from violent acts. We get small tastes of that, and I love seeing all those things layered in. The other thing, too, that I'm intrigued by is I very much thought you could slow play some of the Abby stuff, and they actually don't here. It's not exactly what happens in the game. There's a couple new wrinkles, but there is certain elements that are revealed much sooner to the audience. And it is a decision that I thought was interesting. Not necessarily my favorite, because holding back on some of that info in the game certainly created a very different experience. However, you're talking about television here. I don't think it doesn't make sense to do what Mason does at the beginning of this episode when it comes to Abby's character. The thing that I thought was interesting is that they were still kind of playing some things close to the chest, and then inside the episode, Caitlin Dever reveals another piece that I was like, that one I don't know if I would have given away in the first episode. That being said, what we are getting from Caitlin Dever already is excellent. No matter how they utilize Abby, no matter how much they sprinkle her in, and where different beats in that story land as far as this season goes, in the 2 scenes that we see her in, she is bringing it. She is for sure encapsulating who Abby is and the types of internal things that are going on with Abby quite well, especially in that first scene. And where you see her the second time, it's kind of one of these things where it's like I said, the outside and bigger threats are really the humans, and you're getting that vibe in her performance already, and just the things that are motivating her are all over her performance, which is great and awesome to see because she is in the episode so sparingly. But again, when it comes to the thematical elements, her character, I'm fascinated to see what we get, how much they give us, and how that plays into this idea of outside forces and how you function with people when you come across them in this world if they are outsiders. So again, it's one of these where I think for establishing the world that we're currently in for season 2, this episode does all of those things. When it comes to the thematical elements that Mason and Druckmann are going to be playing with, you get a lot of them layered in here in this first episode. Yes, we're only scratching the surface, but you have an idea of the different places we're going to go and the types of conversations we're going to have. And for me, It's about as perfect a first episode to season 2 as you can have. There are going to be far higher heights than this first episode, and there are going to be way heavier times than this episode. But it does give you peak moments. It does punch you in the gut. It does all the things that I want from this prestige style storytelling and television. And one episode in, there is no denying that The Last of Us is back, and it is bringing heat once again. I think us video game fans should be extremely excited at what's coming. And like I said, I can't personally wait to see how Druckmann and Mazin start adapting everything. And for the people who just love the show and haven't played the games, it's a great continuation from where we left off in season 1. And you can already see where we're going. There's going to be lots of good stuff in here. So episode 1 of season 2, Future Days, checked all the boxes I was looking for in that first episode, to the point where it's like, I love that we get this weekly so that we can talk about it for multiple weeks. But I was also like, damn, I wish I had all the episodes right now, because I just want to see how they do what they're going to do with season 2, considering I already know what's going on story-wise. So first episode, top end stuff for The Last of Us. It is back. It is strong. The acting is phenomenal. The relationships are already starting to build, and those thematical elements and world building things are already at play in a way where I'm like, give me more. The question is, what are you guys thinking? If you are a video game fan, how well did this episode work for you? Did you love the things that were beat for beat, ripped right from the game, put on the screen the way they did that in season 1? Did you like the new elements and the things that were kind of added to give it its own flavor and vibe, but also enhance and build upon what Druckmann has already built? What things are really working? Which character relationships are you kind of already looking at? And if you aren't a video game player, what's working for you in this episode? What are you excited about? Which new characters that we've met do you want to spend more time with? How did Dina hit? Is she a character you're looking forward to? What are you thinking about Isabella Merced's performance, Bella's performance, Pedro, Diego Luna's? Anything you guys got, good, bad, indifferent, on the first episode of The Last of Us Season 2, entitled Future Days, put it down below in that comment section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions, you want to be here as we go week by week with The Last of Us. You want to be here to see my reactions as I get those up. You did the vibe. You want to show a little love and support. Come join C-Maniac Nation. Super easy. Jump over there. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time for the C-Man's Cinema. Sit down. I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace.
C-Maniac Nation, you look nervous. Is it the scars? Would you like to know where I got them? No? Well, then maybe you'd like to see another video with the C-Man. How about up here or over here? And if you really dig the C-Man, well, then show him a little love right over there.